Okay, just want to say a big welcome to everybody from Community Medical Services. Sorry, stumbled on my words there at the front. Just want to say a big welcome to everybody today, whether you're in here live in person with us or whether you're watching it via recording. Just want to say a big thank you for taking a little chunk out of your day to spend some time furthering your learning on the PDP behavioral tool. Now, you might not know me. I might be an unfamiliar face, and that's completely fine. My name is Adriana Scales. I work for an organization called Know Your Talents, and we're actually partnered with CMS to deliver you programs and trainings all centered around the PDP behavioral tool. Now, although I do not work for CMS, I am a trusted partner and advisor, and I just want to support you guys. And if you're looking at that behavior profile up on the screen, that's my behavior profile. And as we get further down in your learning throughout this year, you guys will start to see this more and more. You'll start to understand it more and more. But just to give you a high-level overview, looking at my profile, you'll see in that basic natural self, that blue graph, my highest trait is what we call conformity. It's that fourth column from the left. Conformity is really strong on systems and structure, and my biggest concern is I want to get things right. So when I'm helping people by training them and providing information, I can assure that I'm delivering the right information and I'm really helping you guys create a structure or a system around your learning. My next highest trait up here is this pace/patience, which just means I'm a really patient person. I like to take my time with things. I like to process and think through information. Observing cause and effect before taking action is naturally my preference. And I just want everything to be easy peasy, let's get along. So as I train other people, that is a big core for me. I just want to make it easy for you and digestible for you so we can go through this process together. The most interesting part about my profile is usually my extroversion, which is below this middle line here, which is marked as lower extroversion. Although I don't have super high extroversion and I'm not a big communicator in the sense of wanting to be out in the community and just, talking away, I'm more introspective. However, when I'm getting to train in these instances or just supporting other people, that extroversion goes out the window. I push it up. And it's something that comes really natural to me because I want to support other people. And that's what that lower dominance is also telling us to here, that very first column. That just means I want to support you. I want to help out. I want to be accommodating. So as we go through this journey together, please lean on me. I know today that we had a little bit of confusion with our invites, which is totally fine. But moving forward, I will go ahead and send out the invites to all of you. So it's on your calendar, when it's coming up. And if by chance you see that invite and you go, this person could really benefit from this training, or, this leader also needs to be a part of this, please forward it along because we want to include as many people as possible that will benefit from this training. So just know that I have a system moving forward. I will support you guys with that. And I would love to support you in furthering your learning with this PDP tool. Now, as we talk about the partnership of Know Your Talents and CMS, Know Your Talents, we are a management consulting firm really specializing in the behavioral space, meaning we want to help you understand your staff. We want to help you really understand who they are and really what makes them tick. By using programs that are really centered on behavior, you can highlight 4 major things that almost all employees are looking for from their leader or even their organization. And those 4 things are that people want to really be understood. They want you to know them. They want you to grow them. They want you to include them. And they also want you to inspire them.
Good morning.
I'm going to just go ahead and mute one of our friends here just because of the feedback. But feel free, if you guys do have anything to jump in and share, please share at any point because it definitely helps everybody further their learning. When we talk about using behavior for your teams, for the instances while you're at work, it really can help you highlight these 4 things that all employees are looking for. When we talk about the know me aspect, do you know your staff's specific strengths? Do you know your own strengths? What about the uniqueness of them or their styles, how they like to be approached? When we talk about grow me, what learning opportunities are there? Are they struggling maybe in a certain space that I can help coach them to improve? Include me. Do you understand how they like to be communicated with? Do you understand how your team wants to be a part of certain things, or just even, how to really elicit the big picture if they need the big picture? When we talk about the last one, inspire me, do you really understand how to motivate your employees specifically for them? I know the funny thing too, like I remember when I first started learning behavior, I was like, isn't everybody almost motivated by money? But then I honestly had to take a look inward and no, not everybody is motivated by money. We're all motivated by different things depending on who we are and what's important to us. Now, by using that ProScan tool and the power of behavior, we're able to do this and so much more. So for the topic today and for what we're going to be focusing our time on, we're going to do a high-level overview of behavior, really its uses, its functionality, and just also to diving into some of those strengths so we can understand why behavior can benefit us so much. Well, by using behavior, we can do so many things. We can know our employees, help them grow, but there's a whole myriad of things that you can do with that ProScan survey tool by understanding behavior. One of my favorite things that I always like to say about using ProScan and behavior is that it takes the guesswork out of things. And I know that you all are so busy. I know that the world is moving so fast, and that sometimes it's not easy to take a little bit of time to get to know the people around us. Sometimes it's not easy to have those conversations and really feel like this person's hearing me, they're listening. Or maybe even too, you have two people on your team and they're just not getting along and you can't figure out why, and it's taking out so much of your energy. Well, by using tools like the ProScan and behavior, you can cut out a lot of that guesswork and start to move in a very strategic way towards making those changes happen that are going to benefit you and the employee. When we use behavior to our advantage, we create more connection, we create more understanding, and we also create more self-awareness just for ourselves and for the individual, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing to have. When we do our behavior analysis tool, we use the ProScan survey, and I am curious, have any of you taken the ProScan survey? Anybody want to chime in? Maybe you've taken it, what you've learned about yourself from the ProScan? Anybody want to share? Go ahead and jump in.
I took it. It was, let's see, in late January, and then 6 weeks later did a little review of the results, and it was eerily accurate. It was very, very accurate. It was really eye-opening and enlightening, for sure. Definitely a worthwhile tool.
I love it. Thank you, Chris. Mohammed, would you like to share?
Yeah, no, right along the lines of what Chris just said. It was something that we took. I think most of us did, or some of us did, and went over my results with Erica, and I found that it was kind of like just light bulbs kind of just going off, and wow, like it kind of just nailed it, So it's pretty good to see. It's good to have. Kind of even something that I shared with my wife too, like for outside of work. So it's pretty cool.
I love it. Thank you for sharing, Mohammed. Anybody else have anything they want to chime in? Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much, Chris, Mohammed, for sharing. And I will say that I had a very similar experience the first time I took a ProScan. It was like somebody had a crystal ball about me. Mainly things that I did know about myself, but some things too where I was like, you know what? I do that. And that is something that I love about myself, or something that, I maybe want to work on. So the ProScan can show us a lot of great information. And when we're talking about that ProScan survey, just to give you guys a little bit of background on the survey itself and its uses and kind of how it came to be, the ProScan survey is generated by PDP Global. So you will see that it says PDP Global on all the survey pages, and that is the distributor of the tool. Know Your Talents, we are licensed to sell it, and we are trained in this tool and trained in order to support you guys with your learning for the ProScan survey. When an individual takes the ProScan survey, their results are correlated 148,000 ways, meaning when they answer those 52 questions, there's almost 148,000 options for them to select. So we always get back this kind of interesting profile. Now, you might have a profile like somebody else's, but it might be a little bit different here, a little bit different here. And that's what makes our uniquenesses really shine through. The ProScan survey tool is about 40 years old, and it's constantly being studied and reevaluated to make sure that it is the most accurate that it can be. When individuals take the ProScan survey, one of my favorite things that I love to tell people, especially to, let's say if you have a staff member and you want them to take the survey, but they're a little bit skeptical, no matter how they answer those questions, we cannot see the physical answers to those questions. So let's say, for instance, honesty is an adjective that you have to rate yourself a 1 to 5. If by nature you feel like, no, I persuade a little bit, I lean more into the fibs than the honesty, you can mark that very honestly for yourself, and just knowing that nobody's going to see that. We're only going to see the profile at the end, and the ProScan survey in and of itself is strengths-based. So we're only going to see the good stuff. So if you have somebody who's a little bit skeptical, just remind them of those things. But when they do complete that ProScan survey, there's a whole slew of things that we can do with it. Not only can we see that profile for the individual, but we have access to different reports depending on what you're really looking for. For example, on the individual level, we have reports like the ProScan survey, which is about 18 pages in length. The report's actually called the Personal Dynamics, but people call it the ProScan. If you guys call it that, we all know what we're talking about. That report is about 19 pages in length, and it includes a whole myriad of information all about the individual. Let's say, for instance, you're looking for more of a quick little synopsis. I don't really have the time today to read 19 pages. Well, there's a one-page quick view on the individual as well. You can even get a manager quick view for yourself that tells you a little bit about how to work with this person and how to really set them up for success. Let's say, for instance, you have a new person joining your team. You can create a team scan for your team to really understand the dynamics of how this person is going to add to your team, what's going to change a little bit, or even too, how do I communicate to my team effectively? What's their communication style in the majority? So I can make sure that I'm really highlighting on what they need most from me. Even too, in this team scan, one of my favorite things is the likes and the dislikes. It's a very nice little one page. It's like, yep, our high dominance people on your team are this person, this person, this person, and they're going to like these things. And they're not going to like these things, so stay away from those. Really great information all in that team scan. And we also too have a portion of the tool called Job Scan. And this section is really highlighting on hiring with ProScan. So let's say, for instance, you guys are working in your job and you've been doing it for a good few years and you're high performers, like you are the best of the best. Well, shouldn't we want to bring more people in the organization that are top performers that, naturally are gravitating towards this position? Well, that's what Job Scan allows us to do. It allows us to analyze the behavior of people that are already in the position, help understand those uniquenesses that make them very strong, hone in on those, and help us bring in more people like that so that people have an easier time as they're getting into their career at CMS. Now, with all of these tools, there's a whole myriad of reports, like I talked about, the quick view, the this, the that. And as we get further along in your learning journey, as we talk about certain subjects, I will bring more reports into the conversation so you can learn more about those. But for now, just know that you do have access to a lot of different things. And I will put myself up here just on the plate. If you need support with this, if you're looking like maybe you're struggling with an employee and you want to see their ProScan, if you want to do a little side-by-side between you and the employee, please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to support you in getting some surveys and creating some of those reports so that you can understand your team better. Let's go ahead and dive into behavior for now, and let's go ahead and talk about some of those strengths that are associated with behavior and just a little bit of the background of how behavior comes to be. So when we talk about behavior, it's formed during our early lives. It's a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture. My favorite explanation about, a little bit of nature versus nurture is always that I grew up in a household where my mom was extroversion off the charts. It's her only trait above the midline. She has so much extroversion that I never had to talk. I never really had to say anything. So she got all of that, and my extroversion was tanked at the bottom. And that was very much my upbringing. It was something that came natural to me. As we look at behavior, you are constantly forming throughout your life. But usually by the age of about 27, 28, you're pretty cemented in who you are. You've gone through some of your life experiences, you've gone through some challenges, and you've planted a little bit on who you are. Up until that age though, so if you guys have anybody on your team who is maybe under the age of 27, 28, those people are still very heavily forming in their behavior. So let's say, for instance, you have somebody who's a little bit younger join your team and you're like, I don't know how to work with this person. They're not delivering what I need them to deliver. They're still in that formation years where you can bring the ProScan in and start to have very intentional conversations to help them see how they can shift their behavior to really bring out the highlights in themselves and not really, those things that maybe aren't working for them. Once your behavior cements, however, once you hit that 27, 28, it doesn't mean you're not going to ever change. That's completely untrue. You're constantly going to be adjusting depending on what the environment needs, but typically you go back to your home base of what feels natural or comfortable for you. Now, when we talk about adjustments, typically we see that in what we call the priority environments of the ProScan, or what you guys see on your graph is the red graph. That graph tells us a lot about where people are feeling the need to push their behavior, whether it's, I'm in a networking situation and I have really low extroversion. I have to push that up. for these next few weeks. Or maybe you're a really structured person and there's no structure right now. We kind of just need to make it work. You might push that structure trait a little bit down to make it easier for yourself in the environment. Now, those adjustments are natural. We make those every single day, but typically we do have some type of home base of what feels comfortable or natural for us. So just know that you are constantly adjusting those behaviors, but it's really important to understand the why behind that, because it really helps you see, is this benefiting me or is this really exhausting me in the long run? When we look at behavior can be broken down into 4 major buckets. We have our dominance, extroversion, patience, and conformity. And when you're looking at the ProScan survey, you will notice that there is a line right in the middle of that graph. And that line really helps us see the above the line traits versus the below the line traits. Now, I do want to caveat here, wherever your traits land, there are strengths in every single trait. Even if majority of your traits are below the midline, it doesn't matter. That means that one trait you have above the midline is driving a lot of strengths for you, and same with your below the midline traits. So as we look at our traits and the differences, for example, when we look at dominance, when it's above the midline, this is more of your take charge trait. You're naturally inclined to want to take charge. If by chance it is on the underside of that line or below the midline, this is going to be your supportive trait. If by chance your extroversion is above the midline, this is your people trait. If it's below, more reserved. If your patience is above that middle line, this is going to be your patience trait. Makes sense. But if it's below the middle line, this is your sense of urgency. You have a strong sense of urgency if it's below that middle line. If by chance that conformity is above the midline, that is your systems trait. And if it's below, this is going to be your independent trait. There's also some other metrics that ProScan measures for. We have our decision-making style, whether you're fact, feeling, or balance, energy level and energy style, as well as stress and pressure measurements. Now, for the sake of our conversation today, I don't want to fire hose you guys, and just know that we are going to have a whole multitude of trainings every single month that help you understand more about these concepts, how they came to be, how to identify them in your employees and through the ProScan. So don't feel like you have to remember all of it now. We will keep going on with our training. But for the sake of today, let's talk a little bit more about just the behavioral buckets of dominance, extroversion, patience, and conformity. Now, as we talk about this, I always like to highlight our basic natural self. This is your blue graph. So when we talk about the blue graph, this is where we're going to feel your behavior most. So even though you have that red graph and you have that green graph, the blue graph is what we're going to feel most of the time from you. This is you kind of like when you're on autopilot, you're just driving the car. You don't even think about it. You just do it naturally because it's a part of who you are. When we look at this, it helps us really understand the individual for who they are, how they're going to show up, those strengths that they have, what they like, what they don't like. All types of things are what you're going to find from this basic natural self, especially too, the highlights of their behavior. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Does anybody have dominance above the middle line on their ProScan? Whether you know this, you think. Anybody know? It's okay if you don't. If you want to pull up your ProScans too, totally fine. If not, you might hear some of these words say, oh, yep, that's right, that was me. So when we talk about dominance above that middle line, this is, reminder, your take charge trait. So even though, and I do want to sidebar this a little bit, even if you do not have dominance above the midline or as your highest trait, that does not matter. It does not mean you're never going to take charge. You're never going to be assertive. That is not what it means. It just means that we're inclined to do one more than another and that we actively have to pursue those things. So even though you might have low dominance, it doesn't mean you're not going to take charge. You just might rely on some of those other behaviors, like let's say conformity. I take charge when I feel like I really understand what I'm working on, or I take charge when I really know it's going to impact the people and I can be the cheerleader, or I can take charge when I know the process will go better if I do it. Doesn't mean you will never take charge. It's just for different instances. However, when you have dominance as a high trait above your midline, or even as your highest trait on your graph, which we sometimes call your driver, you are really going to feel that desire to take charge from these individuals. They're very self-assured and confident, very decisive in their decisions and words and actions. One of my favorite things about high dominance people is that I never really have to guess what they're thinking. I never have to guess what's going on because they usually will say exactly what they need to say. When you work with high dominance individuals, just know that they are typically very control oriented, meaning they do want to have a say in the matter. They do want to have some control, some stake in the game. They're typically very direct, and they're a big driver. Just know for these individuals, their biggest concern and their number one motivator really is to get results. So if things are not progressing forward, if the results are not happening, you're going to feel that intensity or pressure from them because they really want to make that result happen. I always recommend as you communicate with your, does that resonate, Erica? Erica, you have higher dominance.
I do. Well, no, my highest is the extroversion A.
Yeah, that's your driver. But isn't your dominance above the midline?
It is. It's above the midline. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Where do you see really show up for that trait for you, Erica? Like, how do you see it really interact?
I like to be direct. I like to see focus on results. And I'm also really big on innovation and trying to be innovative. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So true. And that is so true for our high dominance individuals. They're very big picture, outside of the box in that sense. You know, they can see things from that zoomed out view, and they'll know, okay, this is getting us forward, or we are not moving forward, and it's frustrating. So typically when we talk about the strengths of our high dominance individuals, you want to lean on them when you need somebody who is decisive, when you need somebody who's going to drive that project forward, who's going to almost stop at nothing to get it done. These people are very, very motivated to get that result, and it is such an intrinsic strength of that behavior. Now, let's say, for instance, your dominance is below the middle line. Anybody have that? My assumption is hopefully a few of us, right? Okay, perfect. I see some hands. Awesome. When your dominance is below the middle line, this is your more supportive trait. So naturally, you're going to lean more on wanting to be supportive for other people, wanting to be more collaborative and modest, especially in your approach with people. You don't want to steamroll past anybody. You want to make sure that people are included. And typically that strength of that lower dominance is the fact that these individuals are so supportive, especially when they have direction. Now, that is a big caveat for this trait, whether you yourself have this or if you're leading people who have the lower dominance. And you're wondering, Adriana, you said these people are very supportive, but I cannot get a single one to help me. Well, they're usually stronger with direction, and they really have to understand that why. And you might have to look at those other behaviors too. Maybe if this person, let's say, has really high extroversion, but low dominance, and you're asking them to support you with something that they feel like they're not going to show up well in. Yeah, maybe that supportive trait won't enact so much, but you can really get it to really show up if you give them a little bit more direction and a little bit more support, and even a little bit of encouragement to help them understand they've got this. Naturally, that low dominance can feel very comfortable for us. You know, it makes us feel very included. But if you do have that low dominance, just be aware when you do need to step up and take charge. And also too, using that voice to ask for that direction if you feel like it's not coming to the table. For those of you who have that lower dominance, anybody have anything to share on that one? That's okay. All righty, let's move on. I do want to talk high level about the operation styles. So when I talk about operation style, this happens when you're looking at the highest trait of somebody's behavioral profile. So kind of like Erica was saying, she has extroversion as her driver. That is the highest trait on her graph. She might also have dominance above the midline, but that's not going to be the driver. It is the highest trait. That's going to be the driver. The driver makes up our communication style, our leadership style, as well as our backup style and some learned responses. Now, like I said, we will dive way more deeply into these concepts as we continue our training, but just want to give you at the highest level kind of an overview. As communicators, individuals with the highest trait as dominance or dominance as their driver are typically very direct. They're usually very naturally forceful in their approach when they communicate with others. They're naturally very comfortable in expressing their opinions. And when you speak to them, you're better off going direct. Don't need to beat around the bush. Just say what you need to say and say it once. Make sure you have concise, direct messages because that will just resonate. As leaders, they're typically very decisive. They usually seek that control, and they're really good at maintaining that control. They take charge. They're very decisive. They foster innovation, and they even can create that vision to help their team really drive towards. When people are out of energy or just at the end of their rope, usually what happens is what we call a backup style. And that backup style only happens when we're under extreme stress or extreme pressure. This should not be something that happens all the time to you, but if you are in a very extreme pressure stress situation, you might feel it come out more. But the backup style for our high dominance individuals is this dictatorial steamroller. So usually it comes back to control. When all else fails, they just want to regain that control. So they might steamroll past other people, overpower them with force, disregard their feelings, or even just dictate what needs to get done in a very matter-of-fact way. Never fun to feel like we're in our backup styles constantly. And if you by chance have that driving dominance trait, I want you to think about a time where you got into your backup style, what it felt like, and how you feel like you could get out of it or prevent it from happening in the future. Usually I know that it's never fun to be in our backup style, but being a little bit more aware about what gets you there and how to create a plan almost for getting yourself out of there can be very beneficial for all people in all walks of life, because it's never fun to be on the receiving end of a backup style or to be on our backup style. Any questions on dominance? Anybody have anything to share? Alrighty, let's go ahead and move on to our extroversion trait. Now, when extroversion is above that middle line, we see individuals who are naturally communicative, right? Think about that. If your extroversion is above that middle line, it means it's really showing up for you. So you're enthusiastic, you're motivating, you're really good at influencing people and persuading them. Naturally, too, you have this inclination to want to show up well. You want to represent yourself well, whether that comes from the way you look or those material things, or even, too, the way you sound, the way you present. That's usually a big driver for our higher extroverts. They want to show up well in their environment. So in order to support those higher extroverts, sometimes they need a little bit more conversation. So let's say, for instance, you're a leader and you have really low extroversion. Just know you're going to have to communicate more with those higher extroverts on your team, because they need that. It keeps them engaged. It keeps them motivated. They're going to need, too, a little bit of reassurance because they want to show up well. You're going to have to tell them that they did a good job because it helps keep them engaged and motivated. Let's say, for instance, you have this new policy coming up and you're really struggling on, how do I make this sound interesting? How do I make this a little bit fun? I always recommend you lean on your extroverts because they're really good at bringing people together, cheerleading, getting people engaged, and getting people motivated to move in a direction. So really rely on those individuals for that. Also, too, just know if you're ever struggling with, how do I say this? Or how do I do this? Your high extroverts are very creative. Lean on them to get some of those brainstorming ideas, but just make sure there is a time limit on your brainstorming so we're not going too far into that zone. Anybody with that higher extroversion want to share anything about their trait or maybe even how they've seen it show up for other people?
I see Mohammed has a hand up.
Mohammed, is your hand up from last time, or do you have that high extroversion?
No, my apologies. I forgot to take it down.
No worries.
No worries. But I
Anybody
would
else?
say
Yeah.
for high extroversion, the traits that really resonate for me is just always trying to be motivating. I think it's good that we have trial and error, and I don't think people should strive for perfection. It should just be about a process of learning what works for the individual. And when you can have that mindset, it really helps to, I think there was a quote, nothing ever great was achieved without enthusiasm, because it's really your passion, right? It really gives you the sustainability to move forward when you have conviction. So I do think that's one of the great traits of having the high E, is that you can kind of elevate your mindset even in difficult times and such, because what you're really looking for is that motivating factor. What's really my purpose and my passion? What's going to keep me going, so that, again, I can use my energy and my persuasive skills to the best of abilities.
Exactly, Erica. Thank you for sharing that. That is so spot on. And even too, Erica, you touched on one other thing that is so great about our high extroverts. Biggest influence here typically for our high extroverts is the people side of things. So they're very ingrained into the people side, to the sense of, they want things to work for the people. They really want to understand how to bring that togetherness. If people aren't getting along, our high E's feel it first. They really do, because they want that cohesion. They want that ease in the sense of, we just need to get along. So whenever it comes to those people things, really lean on those high extroverts because they will give you a really good perspective. Now let's look at the other side of the line, our low extroverts. Now, reminder again, just because it's low does not mean it's bad. It just means it's a little bit different and there's strengths associated with that. So let's say, for instance, your extroversion is below that middle line. What are we going to see with when you interact with people? What are those strengths for you? Well, naturally, as a person with low extroversion, you're quite introspective. Now, I use that word intentionally, introspective, instead of the word introverted. We don't really use that word introverted because sometimes it can have a negative connotation of no social skills, no desire to speak. And that's not necessarily true for our low extroverts. They're more introspective, meaning they do a lot of processing and thinking inside of their head. They take an observation of their environment, they process all internally. Naturally, they are going to be a little bit more reserved, private, and quiet, especially around new people. But the more comfortable they get with the situation or a group of people, the more that they're going to open up and you're going to see some more of those, bright colors from them. But just know it might take a little bit of time for you to build that trust. I love relying on my low extroverts for a second opinion, mainly because they listen so much. They take in so much information. They put together all the pieces of the puzzle in their head. And typically, sometimes they might not share it unless they're asked. So I always like to ask that extra question, tell me, do you have a different idea on this? Or what are you really thinking we should do? Typically, their responses are very well thought out because they've been processing through and listening. Typically, too, these individuals with that lower extroversion are really good at remaining focused. They'll come into the office, sit straight down, just get to work sometimes. But then as their load maybe lifts a little bit, they'll come out, say hello, do the little, handshakes and everything. But naturally, these individuals are pretty focused. They want to just keep that head down, really work on what they're working on, listen, have conversations, of course, too, depending on those other traits. We might see a little bit more from these individuals, depending on where those other traits fall. Anybody have that low extroversion, want to chime in anything about themselves or maybe somebody else that they know with low extroversion? Totally fine if not. One of my favorite things that I always like to tell people is you really need to look at that pro scan to understand those low extroverts, because if somebody's extroversion is very far from that middle line, it means they're going to be pretty quiet. So don't expect this, yes, it's so exciting, especially too, if you have maybe high extroversion. You're probably not going to get that from your low E's all the time, and that's totally fine. Just understand that their excitement will come later, maybe after they process through it and think about it, or it might not come because that's not their style to be very much like this. Now, it is a great thing to be able to bring that up in certain instances to get that, oomph out to your team. So that is a learned behavior for our low extroverts, to learn when to pick up that energy a little bit and to have more of those conversations. Now, let's say extroversion is your driving traits. You're going to have these operation styles on your ProScan survey. As a communicator, you're going to be naturally very persuasive and optimistic. You show empathy in conversations and enjoy giving encouragement to other individuals, especially your peers. When people communicate with individuals who have high extroversion, I always recommend speaking positively, going into it very open-minded. Try not to bring an umbrella to their brainstorm. That's the last thing you want to do because it will shut them down. And really promote those opportunities of, ideas, really friendly affirmation and including them. As a backup style, typically what happens when our high E's are put into a corner, they go into a verbal attack, usually because they feel challenged on believability or credibility. They kind of revert into this, I just need to explain everything about what just happened so that you understand, and it turns into a long, exhaustive explanation. Or even too, because they're naturally persuasive and they know what people want to hear, they might have a sharp tongue. Reminder here, think about that backup style, how it's impacted you and the people around you, and how you might navigate that moving forward. Let's go ahead and move on to our PACE/patience, unless there are any questions here on extroversion. Are we good? Any questions? Awesome. All righty. Let's talk about that PACE/patience trait. All right, as we talk about strengths, if that trait is above the middle line for an individual, these are our steady Eddie people. They really enjoy process. They want time to think, time to digest information. And once they've got it, they turn it into a routine. They turn it into a type of, system that really works for them. Individuals who have that higher pace slash patience are very routine oriented. They like predictability in their environment. They're typically very dependable. They do what they say they're going to do because they just really want to help out. That is a big, big driver for our high patience individuals. They just want things to go well. They just want people to get along. They just want it to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. So they will do just about anything to secure that in their environment, even if it means making themselves a little uneasy. Typically, these people are usually good listeners. They're very productive in their environment. They really like to remain focused. And typically, too, these individuals are very, very kind. Not saying that all the other behaviors aren't kind, but you really do feel it when you're working with somebody who has a really high patience, or even that driver trait as a patience. You're really going to feel that desire to really want to support a very calm demeanor, very cooperative disposition. When we talk about our individuals who have that higher pace slash patience, sometimes the biggest challenge for these individuals is adjusting their pace because they get very set in that routine. But really understanding the why is the ticket for our high patience individuals. If you need to squish a deadline quicker, if you need something to happen a little bit faster, whatever the case may be, just tell your high patience people why. Really explain that why to them, and it will help them get on board so much quicker. I swear. When we look at that lower pace slash patience, those strengths, these are our people who are very almost restless in a sense. They have that strong sense of urgency. They just want to get after it and get it done. Typically, they're very fast-paced and action-oriented. They're big drivers and doers. They want things to happen quickly, and they might even get a little impatient in their environment when things aren't happening as quickly as they want them to. They're really good with changing things up. So unlike our higher pace slash patience individuals who, like myself, are a little bit more routine-oriented and don't want to change things up just for the sake of it, our lower patience individuals are totally fine with changing things up, because it actually kind of excites them. And if you have that too, I'd be curious to hear if that excites you to kind of think about things in a different way and change it up. Typically for our low patience individuals, it does. It's not scary. So let's think about it. If you have maybe a new change management plan going on, maybe you could bring somebody with lower patience in to really try it out, see what's going to work, since they're more open to that change in their environment, and then really plan it out for those people who have that higher patience to really understand the process and how to make it work the best. Questions on this, whether you have high patience, low patience, anything you guys want to chime in? Good right now. All righty, let's go ahead and move on to those op styles. So when patience is the driving trait for an individual, meaning it's the highest on their graph, we're going to see these operation styles on the ProScan survey. As a communicator, people who have really high pace slash patience, or just as their driving trait, they're typically very warm and friendly, and they really show that I'm going to listen. You really do feel that from your high patience individuals when you're in a conversation. They really do participate in that active listening very easily. They want harmonious and non-chaotic surroundings, so they want a little bit of time to get comfortable in their environment. So if the communication is maybe a little bit different at first versus what it ends up being the more you get to know them, just know that that's natural. It's okay. They just need to get a little bit more comfortable. I really recommend that you talk to these people in an easygoing manner, really trying to be mindful that if you are a little bit too aggressive with them, they can shut down very easily. That's a very natural tendency for these individuals to maybe want to shut down a little bit. And that's what that backup style is kind of telling us there. But when you're talking with these people, I really, really, really always tell everybody, just give them deadlines, give them time frames, and give them the why. Those are the best things you can do in communicating with your high patience individuals. As leaders, people who have that higher patience typically lean into this caretaker / persistent leadership style, which just means that they want to make it work for everybody. They want to take care of everybody. They'll take what comes and adjust as needed. And typically they show a lot of dependability and consistency in their leadership. And even too, as leaders, they just want to safeguard their team. They want to protect their team a little bit and make sure that things are happening the way that they need to, that it's easy for the team, and that everybody is, moving towards that vision at a comfortable pace. When it comes to the backup style for our higher patience individuals, think about it. They're very harmonious. They like consistency and dependability in their environment. And they like things to be steady, easy peasy. So when things are not steady, easy peasy, what happens? They probably shut down. They like to avoid conflict, kind of go a little bit more internal. They might be nodding their head and smiling at you, but lights on, but no one's home. They are not listening. They are just trying to figure out, how do I get out of this situation? Now, if you are a person with that higher pace/patience and you haven't figured out how to get out of that situation yet, I really recommend you take a little bit of that time and come up with some phrases, whether it's, that's a great thought. Let me go ahead and process on that a little bit, and let's reconvene in the next 25 minutes and I'll get you an answer on that. Even if that's the case, if you just need to step away for a second, allow yourself that time, because if you just keep sitting there in that conversation, not listening, you're going to have to go back and have that conversation again. And that person who delivered the message the first time, depending on their behavior, might not be super excited about having to chat about it again. So really set yourself up for success, especially if you feel like you're getting into that backup style. As we round out our behaviors and our conversation for today, we're going to end on conformity. So as we look at the strengths of conformity, let's say this trait is above the midline for you, or even your highest trait. This is the systems trait. So individuals with really high conformity are typically very structured. They really like a solid plan. They really like SOPs. They really like to understand the details. And that is going to be a big ticket for these individuals. They want to know the details. They want to be in the loop in the sense of, I want to know what's going on. That's really important for them. When you work with individuals who have high conformity, just know that these individuals are sometimes naturally skeptical. So like I said in the beginning, if you have somebody who refuses to take the pro scan, I bet you they have conformity above the middle line, like myself included. I was a little skeptical at first, but that's just a natural inclination of that behavior. These individuals too are very respectful, that you might even meet them and feel a little bit of a maybe rigidity from them at first, but the more you get to know them, the more they're going to open up. But just know this number one concern for these people is, I just want to get it right. I don't want to have to go back and do it twice. I want to do it right the first time. So help me get that information so I can make sure that I'm delivering exactly as needed. Really, really concerned with the getting it right. Does anybody have this trait above the middle line and resonate? I see some head nods. Anybody want to share?
Hey, my name is Leticia. My score on this is a 5.
Oh yeah,
I'm definitely yeah.
there you go.
It's very consistent too. I am skeptical. I do love a plan. I hate working when, for me, it's almost like a trigger, like when all the information is not making sense, or
Yeah.
I've been told one thing and this person's telling me another thing, so it's very like it I definitely go into a stress behavior.
Yeah.
Like stress behavior.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, mine was also, I guess you could call it the driver.
Yep.
I was up there at like 6 something on conformity, and it really was confusing at first because conformity just didn't make sense from just a definition standpoint. But
Yeah.
you look at it from what it entails. It was dead accurate. It was hard to argue with. And I went into this thinking like, oh, another one of these standardized
Yep.
tests from Psych 101. And it's like, I've been through these before, but like I said, this was different. This was I'm surprised I had never heard of this before. And it was eerily accurate again.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. And I love too that you touched on that. Sometimes even I felt the same way going into a conversation about the pro scan. Like, what are you going to tell me? What is this? But the more you have those conversations, especially too, the more you look at what the trait's really saying, the more we're like, okay, yep, that makes sense. That makes sense for me. That's perfect. Thanks for sharing, Chris. So as we look at that high conformity, we see individuals who love that structure, very systems oriented. On the opposite side of that trait, when you have low conformity or below the midline conformity, these individuals are typically very non-traditional. They do not want to be inside of the box. They do not want to work inside of that structure system. They want to get outside of that, find an easier way to make it happen, find a better way to make it happen. Typically, these individuals are not very detail oriented, meaning they don't find a lot of joy in getting into the meticulousness of details. They really are more on that big picture side, more of the idea generator, not so much of the, I want to do all the details and I want to write the report side of it. Typically, they're very free thinkers. They come up with a lot of interesting ideas and are very naturally strategic. They don't want to get stuck inside of something. If something's not working for them, they will pivot within an instant and try something else. Very naturally, too, these individuals seek out that variety, kind of like our lower patience individuals. So if you have low patience and low conformity, you are a big seeker of new ideas, variety in your environment, and kind of getting outside of the box and trying out things that are a little bit different, a little bit new. When we talk about people who have that low conformity, you will feel that from them. I've worked with so many people who have low conformity when it's my highest trait. And they'll always ask me, why don't you do it like this? Or why don't you do it like that or this? And I'm like, those are all great ideas. Can we just wait until I finish the structure first and then let's fix it? I love the ideas. It's amazing because it really does help us improve things, but there does have to be that balance. Think about this. We can't always go one way all the way. We have to have a balance in this. So it's always great to even to understand this about your team. Where are we balanced? Where are we maybe unbalanced? And I need to lean more into my leadership skills to help my team see things in a little bit of a different way. When we look at conformity as the driving trait, meaning it's the highest on your pro scan, we have these operation styles up on the screen. So as a communicator, you are a little bit guarded, cautious, exacting, which just means you're a little bit more selective as a communicator. Usually you rely on policies and rules on basis of your action, because you want to make sure you're doing the most right thing. You itemize things in detail and you expect accuracy from yourself as well as others. When you're communicating with people who have that higher conformity, I always recommend leaning on systems and proven procedures. Usually that high conformity is very much prove it to me. If you're just coming and saying, well, because I think so, or because I say so, it's not going to really work. High conformists need a little bit more detail in the conversation. Make sure too, we are respectful. That is a big one. The second you disrespect somebody with high conformity, they feel it. And that is a big core for those individuals. We do not want to be disrespected, because I have worked just as hard as you have, and you will feel that the second you go into that zone with that person. And then as a backup style, so funny. I heard the term noologist the other day, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm such a noologist. So what happens when you back up a noologist in the corner? Well, I'm going to prove to you that I am right. Usually this comes from just doing a little bit of information, or you'll say, well, yeah, if you saw the email that I sent, I included all the information. It's very much throwing out details, throwing out facts that prove that they are right, and really just burying that other person with the sense of, I know this and I know I'm right. Even if you know you're wrong, you'll still probably fight for it just because you need to, you want to. Reminder, if you've been here, how do we get out of it? How do we excuse ourselves so that somebody's not on the receiving end of it? All righty. As we round out our time, I do want to just kind of ask you guys how you envision using behavior or ProScan in your day-to-day, if there's anything I can support you with or any questions you have, but would just love to hear just some feedback on how you feel like you guys might use this tool.
I have some feedback.
Perfect.
This would be such an amazing tool to use with the staff.
Yeah.
That would help us a great deal know how to coach individually.
Yeah. I'm writing down some of these ideas.
Yeah.
What else?
I want to say for me, because one of my things is I always like to learn the people around me all the time. Like that's one of my big things.
Yeah.
So, but this is also making me realize and recognize that before you do that, you got to do that with yourself first too, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Once you learn more about yourself, you can learn how to communicate and interact with others better. So I like the way that it breaks that down and shows us our strengths and our weaknesses. Well, not weaknesses per se, but
Learning
different ways that we
opportunities.
operate. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I get from it.
Perfect, John. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to share? Any questions even?
I agree with Lisa. I think it would be really important, not only for me to take the test. I haven't taken it yet. Since I'm new,
Yeah.
I would love to get the link. And I think it'd be great for like my team, because we are a small team, just so I can better like understand like how to interact with some of them that are completely different types of people than I am.
Yes, so true. And really too, the hope is the more that we get into these trainings and webinars, the more that you guys will learn. And then as we get you guys those reports, it'll be easier for you to have those conversations. Because I know when most of you probably sat down with Erica, Erica is a subject matter expert. She is certified in this, which is amazing. But for you guys, it might take you a little bit more time of bite-sized learning to feel comfortable to have those chats. And so that's really what I'm here to do, is to support you guys with your own understanding of yourself and self-awareness, but also too, how can I use this to understand my team better, to coach them to success, and to really, make this togetherness happen so that I'm feeling a lot less stress from my team. They're feeling a lot less stress from each other. And we're just all understanding one another and moving forward in a really nice way. So that's our hope.
And I appreciate that, and team, if you do need a pro scan sent to you, you can just reach out to myself, and Andrew and I will make sure that that gets out to you. I think our next step as an organization is to decide how we want to integrate the pro scan conversations and the dynamics within our team. So, let's start for now with making sure you get your pro scan and anyone in your clinic who wants it. And then I'll work to get a schedule, because we have 3 individuals, with myself included, who are certified to have the conversations, and that's Jenna and Dakota. So I'll have to work to understand their calendar. But the good news is there's a way to make it all happen and work. You just have to, be patient as we work through the detail of it. But yes, start requesting pro scans. And I believe you can even retake a pro scan if you want after 6 or 9 months.
Yeah,
Is that the
6 months.
recommendation?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm going to redo mine too.
Yeah.
Just it's been almost 7 months. I'm very curious, because this seems to be a great assessment tool to really evaluate how you present and how you're showing up for everything in life, not just work. So that's what I appreciate. So thank you.
So true. Of course. Sarah, did you have something? Oh, maybe not. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to the microphone.
Oh yeah, no worries.
So here in Marion, we've already started a burnout project
Mm.
that we're looking at. And one of the things that they had come up with as a team, because I pulled an individual from each area. It's their project. They need to be as bluntly honest as possible, with no fear of repercussions about what they feel is causing the burnout. And one of the things that they actually came up with here is having our entire team do a personality test.
Yeah.
I had a predictive index at a previous employer, so I feel like I've got a pretty good read on people. So I think I agree with him. I think that would be a good tool, because as they talked amongst themselves, they're learning a lot of different things. So I think that would be a good tool for them. Is there a way that I could get it for my whole clinic, or do I have to wait?
Erica, do you know a little bit on the timeline for that?
Not yet. I know that there's a meeting next week, so I should get some more clarity by then.
Okay, awesome. Sarah, once Erica has a little bit more of that info, she'll get back. But it's so funny that you've done predictive index. It's very similar to that. It's just the words are a little different. So that's great that you know that. It definitely gives you a leg up in that.
Yeah, I think it is a very useful tool. And actually, once we went through the training and learning, I knew about me, and now once I learned all of those different aspects, I'm able to see that in other people.
Yeah.
Which has helped me, I think, which has helped me hire the team that I have. That
exactly
gets along so well.
I love it. That is so spot on.
We have our issues, but we also,
because you're humans, of course.
Yeah. So
that's perfect. That is why behavior. That is so spot on. I love it. Thank you, Sarah. Alrighty, team. Anybody have any questions, other questions that I can answer before we get going for today? And if by chance you do have any last minute questions, maybe you're a high patience person like myself, and you process after the fact, you go, you know what? I don't really understand this, or I don't get this. Please feel free to email me. Please, please, please. I can answer any questions after the fact. I would love to connect and just support your learning. And I also too have a survey up here on the left-hand side, this QR code. And this is just an evaluation on the training for today. And also too, just kind of what you learned, what you're thinking. It shouldn't take you too long. So if you have the time, whether you're here in the session live, or if you're watching it via recording, please take the survey. It helps us really make sure that the content is where you need it to be to support you. Maria, I see a hand up. Can I answer something for you?
Yes, it actually is just on the recording. Are we going to get that in our emails, or just so that I can watch it a few times? Because I did my assessment. I heard everything she said.
Yeah.
But to go back and look at my stuff, I was kind of like, oh, I can't remember what she told me.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to upload this recording to YouTube in like the next hour, and then I'll send it to Erica. And then in the future too, I'll probably just like follow up all of our trainings just from the invite to say, here's the recording if you need to come back and watch it. So you guys will definitely have access to that.
Cool, because I'm not a
great one.
YouTuber.
That's a good one.
Don't
And
worry.
Maria, we
I don't
also
know how to use
aligned,
YouTube.
we also aligned with the business leaders, Maria, just so you know, like anyone who couldn't attend, there'll be a little quiz for them. So listen in to get the impactful learning. But if you join live, there's no quiz. So A is right. Like we'll always send it as a supplement, but also for those who can't attend, we want to make sure they get some embedment.
Yep. Exactamundo. Great question, Maria. Thank you. All righty. Thank you guys so much. Just want to remind you too, next month, I'll be sending out the invite, so it'll be on your calendar. Please forward to anybody you think should be here. The more, the merrier. Always fun to learn together. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for taking this time out of your day. I know it's not easy, but I really appreciate it and your desire to learn a little bit more and to use this tool. So thank you. Have a fantastic day, and I'll be excited to see you guys next month.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, team.
Bye, team.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.